Hi, I'm Rachel Lane, and this is my methodology presentation about an examination of restorative interventions and racial equity in out-of-school suspensions. So, like I mentioned, the title of this article that I'm looking at is an examination of restorative interventions and racial equity in out-of-school suspensions. The authors of this article are Anne Gregory, Francis L. Huang, Yolanda Agnon, Greer Eldridge, and Barbara Downing. Here is the abstract. Districts have been engaged in efforts to reduce differential processing of discipline-referred students based on their racial backgrounds. They strive for fair assignment of exclusionary consequences across racial groups. The current study examines discipline records for one academic year in an urban school district to identify the factors associated with equitable assignment of out-of-school suspensions, or OSS. Multi-level logistic regression found that student participation in restorative interventions substantially reduced the odds that individual students received OSS. However, such participation was only marginally associated with more comparable assignment of OSS to Black students relative to their white peers. Together, these findings suggest that alternatives to suspension, such as restorative interventions, may yield benefits for all student groups, but they may result in only marginal narrowing of the disparities in suspension rates between Black and white students. This indicates that greater attention is needed to address the inequitable school context in which disparities arise. So their research question is what factors are associated with equitable assignment of out-of-school suspension, or OSS? And when they say equitable assignment, they are ensuring that the decision to assign OSS is not contingent on a student's race, gender, socioeconomic status, or the presence of a disability. For the type of study, within the article, it states that it is a cross-sectional design and multi-level modeling, and that it is quantitative in nature and how it's presented. So in essence, the cross-sectional nature of this study provides a snapshot of a school system in a specific period of time, which they're looking at the 2014 to 2015 school year. And the multi-level modeling allows for researchers to look at numerous levels that are influencing and being influenced within this study. So, for example, they can look at individual differences, whether or not students participated in restorative interventions, as well as school-wide differences. Since the information is being collected, is close-ended in responses such as yes or no, or select one of the following items, the nature of the study is quantitative. So Denver demographic information, it's Denver Public Schools, students who were disciplined from grades K through 12 and attended school during the 2014 to 2015 academic school year. And this is from a school system database that all the Denver public schools use. So this group, as listed above, was 57.7% Latino, 24.9% Black, 11.4% white, 3.6% multiracial, 1.4% Asian, 0.9% Native American, and 0.2% Pacific Islander. Nearly 32% of the disciplined students were female, and 68.2% were male. Almost 39% of these students were English language learners, and 87.4% were eligible for free and reduced price lunch, or FRL. 21% received special education services, and 3.6 were classified as having a serious emotional disturbance. And the majority of the sample was in grades 6 through 12, which is 6 through 10, which is 62%. So the hypothesis of their research was, and quote, the strength of the relationship between students, race/ethnicity, and the odds of receiving an OSS would decrease after including student-level alternatives to suspension and school-level RI, which is restorative intervention, variables in the model, while controlling for other student and school characteristics. Therefore, the null hypothesis would be the strength of the relationship between students' race and ethnicity and the odds of receiving an OSS, out of school suspension, would be unchanged after including student-level alternatives to suspension and school-level RI variables in the model, while controlling for other student and school characteristics. So, within this study, there are several variables being assessed. In fact, there are 4 models that compare different variables, which I will show the tables and graphs, or just the tables that were included in the research in the following slides. So first, in Model 1, we have the variables of race and ethnicity and the frequency of receiving out-of-school suspensions. So how they aggregate that data is the out-of-school suspensions are simply a toggle yes or no, whether or not they receive them. And race and ethnicity is broken down into white, Black, Latino, and other groups. And other groups includes Native American, Asian, Pacific Islander, and multiracial individuals. For Model 2, we see the comparison of race and ethnicity and one or more office discipline referrals. So those are referrals that refer to where a teacher refers a student to an outside source, often a discipline individual who's hired for the school or a principal or even a social worker. And this includes levels 2 through 5 based on the severity. So level 1, which is not included in this graph, the situation is dealt with by the teacher and was not referred elsewhere, so no office discipline referral was made. On level 2, this includes severe disrespect or defiance, theft or destruction of school property valued at less than $500, consensual but inappropriate physical contact, trespassing, possession of fireworks, and false activation of a fire alarm. Level 3 refers to possession of drugs or alcohol and being intoxicated on campus. This can also include sexual harassment and property damage. Level 4 can include anything from unlawful sexual contact to arson to hazing. And level 5 includes anything from robbery to possession of a dangerous weapon, drug distribution, first or second degree assault, and sexual assault. And the race and ethnicity factors are the same as in Model 1. Then we have Model 3, which are percentage variables. So in addition to looking at race and ethnicity, out-of-school suspensions, and office discipline referrals, or sometimes they're referred to ODRs, you also have percentage variables that include free and reduced lunch, percentage of Black students enrolled, incident rate, restorative intervention rate. So other contextual factors that could influence the rate of those referrals. And then Model 4, in addition to including the information for Model 1, 2, and 3, Model 4 includes 2 restorative intervention variables. So 1, did the student participate in one or more restorative interventions? And were students who were disciplined addressed with a restorative intervention? They also added in school suspension. They added in school suspensions and behavioral contracts to out of school suspension, seeing as some students will receive in school suspension or behavioral contracts as an alternative to out of school suspensions. So they wanted to see if there was continuity with implementing restorative interventions when students are not getting out of school suspension. So here is Model 1. So frequency counts of receiving an out-of-school suspension by race and ethnicity. So we see the race and ethnicity breakdown on the left column, and then on the rows, we see whether or not they received an out-of-school suspension along with the total. And then you see the row percentage. So that's Model 1. Model 2 is percentage of students with one or more office discipline referrals in each infraction level by race. So, as I discussed earlier, the infraction levels refer to certain levels of defiance and certain levels of violence within the school. So, you have level 2, 3, 4, 5 broken down by race. So, once again, we're just comparing two variables. And then models 3 and 4 gets a little more complicated, but you can see up here at the top in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, there's model 3, model 4. And so the letters here at the top are for OR means odds ratio, LL lower limit of 95% confidence interval, UL upper limit of the 95% confidence interval, FRL is free or reduced lunch, which you'll see on the side. AUC is area under the curve, ISS is in-school suspension, and RI is restorative intervention. So Model 3 added the school level predictors that I discussed previously. Excuse me.